Meredith Gorman here, and are you still not subscribed to Matt's channel? Well, if you're not, hit the subscribe button because he's giving out free picks each and every week. Hope you have a good rest of your day.
We are back, guys, after a week off. UFC Kansas City Fight Night card, Gary versus Pradas. Gary saved this card, as we all know. We'll talk about that fight shortly. And the main card. We'll break down the main card like always. Provide free picks, leans, price talk, value, and more. Systemsportscapping.com is the website, or link.me/systemcapping. Everything is over there. From records, updated records, resume, articles, client opportunities, and more. Currently handicapping the UFC, PGA, and NHL playoffs at low volume. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please give it a 5-star rating. It does help out a ton. It only takes you 10 seconds. That'd be much appreciated, guys. And on YouTube, please subscribe, like the video. I know I got a lot of listeners on audio platforms more these days, but if you're still watching on YouTube, shout out to you guys. And I know there's some OGs that still watch on YouTube, so it is much appreciated. 20-2 client run on the line, guys. The average line during that run has been plus 133, making it the biggest run in the UFC from an outcome standpoint. We did have a 21-2 run, right? If you look back at Perfect Run, we had a 17-0 run a few years ago as well. A lot of runs in the UFC. Every year, you know, we're going to get really hot, going a nice run. Currently 20-2, that's all cards. Pay-per-view, though, 11-0 run. Right now, keep in mind that 21-2 run from last year was a pay-per-view run only. This 20-2 run is all card, so it's going to be on the line this weekend. On fire right now, to say the least. Let's try to continue. It's going to be tough, right? The betting gods would say it's time for a losing card. The system is looking to prove them wrong. Week off last week. So there is really nothing to recap. It was a perfect 5-0 pay-per-view card from 2 weeks ago. However, client card for this event will be available Friday after the weigh-ins, guys. Remember, I do this podcast on Thursdays. A lot of research on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Things happen, right? Things happen after the podcast at times, especially with weigh-ins. Maybe some extra information comes up as well. That's where the client card does play in for everybody. You also get detailed breakdowns, exact unit size that I'm betting, right? So obviously a lot of beneficials, and you can see the record as well. Proven long-term winner over the years and years, right? Anyone can go on I wouldn't say anyone can go on a 20-2 run, especially at plus 133. However, these runs continue year after year. If you're new to listening to me, then maybe you wouldn't realize that. But obviously, a lot of long-term listeners are aware, and that's why I believe they continue to come back. Let's get right into this card, guys. Let's get right into this card. Probably be a little shorter podcast due to no recap, but let's get right into it. Main event. It's a good one, guys. Gary minus 125 versus Pradas plus 100. The line tells you, what I'm thinking as well. Not an easy handicap. And there's multiple reasons for that, which we'll get into. I like to break down these fights as thorough as possible. Books are saying, Gary should be a slight favorite here. Minus 125 due to the resume. I do believe he's a little more well-rounded than Pradas, but Pradas super dangerous on the feet. And it's tough to get in front of these fighting nerds at this time. Right? How good is Pradas grappling and takedown defense? On paper, the takedown defense looks good at 91%. He just hasn't fought much. I know, watching film on him training, obviously he does train a lot of wrestling, but he is a Muay Thai fighter. That's his strength. He likes to fight on the feet, has power on the feet, very good striker, sniper style striker. Right? Also, Gary taking this on short notice. Will that affect him? There's question marks in this fight. And when I see question marks, I don't get excited to pull the trigger and have a larger unit bet or a bet for clients when there's question marks and when the odds are super close like this and I don't see a clear-cut winner after doing all my research. You know, Protas has been looking spectacular so far in the UFC. 4-0, right? All finishes. Like I mentioned, he's a sniper, has that power to hurt you on the feet. Excellent striking. You know, those wins were against, let's look at them, right? 4-0 in UFC, sure, it's nice, but let's take a look at the resume, right? Big resume difference between these two guys. I mentioned that, right? Trevin Giles, Charlie Ratke, Zhiling Li, and Neil Magny. Okay, so Zhiling Li and Neil Magny, obviously the best two wins. Let's examine those wins. Well, let's start even with Giles. Right? Lost 3 fights in a row, has 7 losses, and is a part-time cop. Let's keep that in mind. Radke, he's just fighting low-level guys in the division. He's been getting a few wins, actually, as of late, Radke, but it's just low-level guys. Low-level guys that he's fighting. Lee, now, older, right? That's a legit win, I would say, but not at this point in Lee's career. Right, lost 3 of his last 4 fights as well. And it's towards the end of his career doing commentating. He's doing other stuff right now for the UFC. And Magny win. Always nice to beat Neil Magny. We know he's a gatekeeper of the division, and he's not an easy fight. So it's still a decent win. I'm not going to sit here and say it's a bad win. It's a solid win for Magny. For Protas over Magny. Right? But this is going to be obviously Protas' toughest test yet, right? In comes Gary, prime of his career. Last 2 fighters he's been fighting are guys at the end of his career. So of course he's going to look great in those matchups. You know, at times it's not easy to look good against Magny. So I do rate that win for Protas. But, you know, in comes Gary, guys in his prime, toughest test yet for Protas. How will he look against a guy like Gary? There's question marks there. Right, Gary's coming off fights with Jeff Neal, Michael Page, and Rachmanov. The resume difference is huge here. Huge. And I believe that's why the books are favoring Gary here slightly. You know, his first loss of his career, also Gary experienced against Rachmanov, right? Competitive fight. He was able to stuff takedowns very well. He had Rachmanov, if I recall, in a dangerous choke at one point. Right? Rachmanov was supposed to be the boogeyman. Did not look great in that fight. Gary limited Rachmanov to look good at all. Rachmanov did enough, but didn't look great in that fight. Now, you could argue that Gary doesn't look great in some of his wins as well, and I agree with that. The Page fight, though, let's be honest, very difficult guy to fight. But Gary was able to find a way. Now, Gary should have a grappling advantage here, but will he use it? Is he going to be able to get Protas down? Is the question. Protas, obviously, I do believe has a striking advantage. Gary does have good striking. It's very calculated. But Protas is just going to be more dangerous on the feet with big shots. Gary has shown to have a fairly solid defense, though, on the feet. So it'll be an interesting battle, right? Protas' dangerous striking on the feet versus Gary's solid defense. Can Protas land that big shot and hurt Gary in this fight? We will see. Like I mentioned, Protas really hasn't fought. I mentioned at the top here, 91% takedown defense, but he just hasn't fought any wrestlers. And yes, Gary's not a wrestler, but he has shown that he can use some grappling and wrestling. But is he going to be able to get Protas down, right? Gary's not known for his takedowns, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how Gary approaches this fight. I don't believe it's smart to just stand and kickbox with him for 5 rounds. Right? So he does need to make it an MMA mixed martial arts fight, make it ugly at times, maybe against a cage. I believe if Gary wins this fight, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be done enough, just like some of his other fights as well, all right? Already, right? So let's be honest. Gary, when he's been winning fights before, later in his career, when the fights are getting a little tougher, they haven't been pretty. This is 5 rounds as well, right? And I believe that does favor Gary. A couple of reasons. One, we haven't seen Pradas late in fights, right? It's always first round, second round finishes. We have seen Gary go deep with, killers like Rachmanov. And yes, I'm going to throw out the Pradas smokes, right? I don't know how much that's going to affect him, but I'm going to throw that in there. He's a smoker, smokes a lot. How does he look if this gets into 3, 4, or 5? We don't know, right? There's unknowns there. Doesn't look like he's in bad shape. Very lean guy. It would be hard to see maybe cardio go. But yes, you have to give Gary the advantage that it's a 5-round fight. That's all we've seen so far from Pradas, first round, second round. Right, he hasn't fought. He hasn't got out of the second round outside of the UFC. We're going back, of course, since 2019, guys. Coffee break, 1 sec. So it'll be very interesting if this gets into the 4th, 5th round. How will Pradas look? And maybe we'll see it here. I have a difficulty seeing, Gary getting knocked out early in this fight. Hard to see that, right? Fighting nerds, guys. 19-0. You don't want to go against them right now. Now, I had someone reach out to me before when I posted on X. Oh, don't forget about the female fighter. She lost. And we don't count her, guys. 19-0 with the core team, right? The core team here. That's who we're following here. Hard to get in front of this record, right? I'm not running to the window on Gary, right? Very difficult for me to bet against the Fighting Nerds and Pradas right now. Even though I'm slightly leaning Gary, this is not a confident pick. It's not going to make my client card. If I do bet this fight, I may be looking at the over in rounds on this fight. I expect Gary to avoid the power shots. I don't believe Gary will finish Pradas, right? If he does, it could be like maybe a sneaky submission. He's not going to knock him out on the feet. Maybe he finds a submission. We've seen Gary has a sneaky game, even though he couldn't wrap up a submission a few times in those fights. But he does have a grappling advantage from what I know and what I've seen so far. Market slightly favoring Gary, even on short notice. Like I mentioned, resume, grappling advantage here. I believe he's a little more well-rounded. However, I could see Gary having issues getting the fight down to the ground, and then he could be in trouble, right? Getting hit with big shots. Either way, tough fight to handicap here. Not confident in the fight. For podcast purposes, I'm leaning Gary. Don't love it, though. And I like the over in rounds. I would like that more than a side here. Anthony Smith, plus 360 versus Zhang, minus 500. I'm unsure why Anthony Smith is still fighting, to be honest, guys. He has lost 3 of his last 4 against much tougher competition than Zhang, Reyes, Dolitz, and Roundtree. So I do got to give him a shout out there. His solo win in there was against Petrino. It's actually a nice win. Petrino was highly talked about before that fight. What does Anthony Smith have left? That's what you're backing on here, right? Even if you do see some value here at the price, sure. There's some value here, but just because there's value doesn't mean you bet it, right? I have this closer to maybe, Zhang 3-1 favorite. Right? This is crazy, minus 500. I can't back Zhang at minus 500, even though I do believe he wins the fight, right? What is Anthony Smith fighting for right now? Paycheck, possibly? He did mention that this could be his retirement fight. And I don't get the fight. Like, why not fight a guy that's in a similar boat? Zhang's a guy that's an up-and-comer, and they're trying to build the Chinese market off his name, so why not give him Anthony Smith? That's what this fight is. Zhang's undefeated since 2020. Only 2 UFC fights. Has a win over low-level guys, Ribeiro and Diaz, guys. So keep that in mind. Resume advantage, huge for Smith here, but keep in mind how old he is and, just how much punishment he's taken over. You remember, he has 21 losses, guys, on his record. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. Zhang shows, both first-round finishes in those UFC fights. He likes to come forward, loves to fight, very action-type fighter. So Anthony Smith's going to have to avoid that first-round punishment to win this fight. Just unbettable at this price. If you like Zhang, you probably want to take him by finish. right? At some point, I believe Zhang does get the finish. UFC is just trying to build the Chinese market here. Here's another guy they could build, right? Decent record, undefeated in the UFC so far. Beat a veteran guy. He's on your resume. It looks good unless you really look at when he beat Anthony Smith, right? Keep all this in mind. At this point of Smith's career, hard to back him. Hard to back him even at this price. Like I mentioned, I believe the price is inflated a little bit. So there is value here on Anthony Smith. I just can't get there. Now, it's his retirement fight, He might not go away easy. But I do believe Zhang's power and striking may be a little too much. Can Anthony Smith get this fight down to the ground? Get a submission? Possible. Right? That's going to be his path here. Try to get the fight down. Is he going to use that game plan? That's the big question. Giga Chikadze plus 150 versus Onama minus 175. Interesting fight here. Fun one, in my opinion. A lot of hype on Giga years ago, right? Remember Giga, the Georgian killer coming in. We know the Georgian, now they bring out a lot of great fighters. Marab, Topuria. But Calvin Kattar ruined that. Absolutely ruined his career. Beat the shit out of him. It was tough to watch. And then he's lost 2 of his last 3 fights. Last fight against Arnold Allen. Beat him up. His only win in that time. And Giga's also been taking a lot of time off. A little older now at 37. His low-level win against, sometimes tricky, Alex Caceres. And it was a decision win, and Caceres had his moments in that fight as well. Keep that in mind. Onama, he's back on a winning streak after tough fights. He had some tough fights and losses against Mason Jones years ago. And then Nate Landwehr was his recent loss a few years back. Not great losses on his resume for a guy that had a little more hype coming in. Now he's won 3 fights in a row over, easy opponents. Gabe Santos, Jonathan Pierce, and Romero. And at times, he looked tough in those Santos and Pierce fights. So Onama has issues. Some of it's cardio issues when the fight gets later in fights. His defense as well is questionable on the feet, and that's not a good sign against Giga. Right, so Giga is live here, for a big head kick or some big punch that lands. We have seen Onama knocked down at times, but never finished. So he's never been finished in his career, and you have to mention that because he is very durable, even though we've seen at times, he's been checked with his chin, but he gets right back up. He gets knocked down, but never out cold. Looking at the stats here, from a stat standpoint, Onama will have a volume advantage here at over 5 significant strikes per minute. And, Giga's always fairly low at 3.9. He's more of likes to pick and look for the big shot than more of a volume guy, which could be an issue if this fight goes 3 rounds. Onama also will have a grappling advantage here. We know Giga doesn't grapple. He's a striker, and that's when he gets in trouble, when he can't wrestle, right? Even Calvin Kattar took him down. So Onama, I do believe he gets the win here. It's going to be a close fight, though. I'm not excited about it at this price of minus 175. To improve it, you may want to look at the finish, at the maybe decision prop on Onama. But yeah, Giga just doesn't fight a ton. He does have a resume advantage, so that is something to keep in mind. It is something that I do look at, right? He's just fought Arnold Allen and lost, and now he's going down to Onama, which I do believe is a step down in competition. So again, I don't love Onama. I'm not as high on him as some. Is this going to make my client card? No. But for podcast purposes, Onama will be the play. If you want to improve it, you can get it by decision. Hopefully Onama makes this an MMA fight and not a kickboxing fight, which I do believe he loses. If he mixes it up, makes it ugly against the cage, and gets the fight down to the ground, Onama should win this fight. But either way, it's going to be a close fight. You can also look at the over and rounds. Fight goes to decision. Those are good props to look at for this fight. Pereira minus 138 versus Magomedov plus 110. Good bounce back spot here for Pereira, in my opinion. After a tough loss last time out versus Anthony Hernandez, who's just a dog. And it was a close fight. Pereira had his moments. It's just Anthony Hernandez's wrestling is just too good, guys. Pereira at times got up in that fight. Magomedov may try to wrestle in this fight, but I don't believe Pereira is going to get held down. Pereira, before that loss to Anthony Hernandez, won an 8-fight winning streak. A lot of hype around him. If he beat Anthony Hernandez, this guy wouldn't have been far from a title shot. Start fighting, the top 5 guys in the division. Magomedov 3-2 in the UFC. I'm not high on him. Hasn't been impressive in my eyes. He has some cardio issues at times. Fight IQ could be questionable. He has some back-to-back wins over lower-level guys, but he's on a 2-fight win streak, and I do have to mention that here. So Pereira is going to have the cardio advantage here. He'll have more volume as well. Magomedov very low volume at 2.6. He looks for that big shot. Pereira very difficult to finish. So I don't believe Magomedov is going to knock him out clean. That would be very difficult to see here. And I do believe if he tries to wrestle, Pereira is going to have some I'm not saying he has a wrestling advantage, but I believe if he gets taken down, he's going to have enough to get back up. He showed that in the Anthony Hernandez fight. Anthony Hernandez may be the best wrestler in the division. So keep that in mind here, guys. Magomedov also has success that I have noted here that, a lot of his success comes against one of his smaller guys like Wally Alves, right? That was one of his fights, a lot smaller guy. Pereira is going to be his size, if not bigger. So keep that in mind here. I'm going to have to look up Pereira. The price isn't terrible. It would be a smaller unit on Pereira, though. I can't run to the window here because Magomedov is live. Due to, his wrestling, and does have some power on the feet. So it's not like, Pereira for sure, I love the pick, it's going to be a big play this week. It's definitely not. But I am going to lean Pereira. I may make the client card in some capacity this weekend. Last one I'll talk about here, guys. It's Randy Brown minus 250 versus Dalby plus 200. Interesting one here. A little older guys in the career. Dalby a little older now at 40. 40 guys now believe that. I believe Brown is the rightful favorite. I don't agree with the minus 250. Not far off. You could say minus 180, minus 200, right? I don't believe the market's way off here. Brown's coming off a tough loss versus Brian Battle in the last time out. Battle just made it ugly. Battle was able to win the fight in an ugly one. If it's an ugly fight, you could beat Randy Brown in my eyes. Dalby will have to do that, but could he do it for 3 rounds at his age right now? I still believe he has something left in the tank. Dalby, right? He's the upset special. You know how many times he's won at plus 200 or better? That's what he does. He wins those fights, which does scare me a little bit. And you expect this fight to be close. This is going to be a close fight. These guys fight to decisions, right? And Dalby's never been knocked out. So it's hard for me to say, I love Randy Brown here. And, when his only path realistically is most likely by decision, right? He wins a point-style fight. That's how he usually wins fight, with his reach, right? He's able to stay away from wrestlers, able to use his reach. Against Battle, he wasn't, which is a little concerning. I just don't know what Dalby still has left here at 40. I think Brown's length and distance game will win him the fight. Again, Dalby's never been finished, so you want to improve that price. You got to look at a decision, right? That's the only way you can really look at it. Just because I haven't seen Dalby, it's not like Randy Brown's some power puncher. He does have a sneaky submission game at times, but I don't believe the fight's going to get there. It's going to be a stand-up fight, I believe, for the most part. So, interesting one here. I do like Randy Brown, but again, you could be biting your fingernails in this fight. It could be a very close fight. We've seen Dalby ruin cards before. So am I that confident that Randy Brown wins the fight? No, but I believe he wins the fight probably 7 out of 10 times. Is that enough for me to bet it? In most cases, it is. That will do it, guys. That will do it. UFC Kansas City. It's a fairly good card. Some good fights for a fight night card. It's not at the apex. Usually when they go and travel, they try to make the cards a little better. Obviously, Ian Gary saved this card, so hats off to him. Excited for the UFC to be back. Sometimes it is nice to have a week off, especially when you're on a hot run like that. It's nice to regroup and see if you can continue to beat the odds in keeping this run alive. Like I always say, guys, bet smart and know your limits. Enjoy this card.